Hello, everyone. I'm Ellen Besner, and you're watching the Canadian Jewish News' North Star podcast. Well, this week, one of our own was standing behind a podium on Jeopardy, and he won. Now, if you were watching, you probably had your heart in your throat for a little while there on the first night. If you weren't watching, you probably already heard about it because when somebody from our team here at the Canadian Jewish News makes it onto the most iconic game show in television history, we take notice. So today on the CJN's North Star podcast, we're doing something a little bit lighter. After weeks of covering all this heavy news, it's really nice to celebrate a moment of pure intellectual joy. I'm joined by James Hirsh. He's the co-host of the Menschwarmers podcast. He's here to talk about what it's like under those studio lights, how he prepared for appearing on Jeopardy, and what was going through his mind during Final Jeopardy or the Daily Double. Here's our conversation. Jamie, it's good to see you. Congratulations.
Thanks so much, Ellen. Nice to be on this side of the podcast interview. You know, being asked questions as opposed to having to come up with questions is so much more difficult. I think I haven't been asked any questions yet, so I don't know.
Yeah, well, you've never been subjected to the Besner method, but in terms of I don't think it could be as hard as Jeopardy and the pressure. When you were watching yourself on national TV, you had to wear like a jacket and a fancy shirt. Like now, podcasters are a little bit less formal, so the whole experience must have been quite amazing to see yourself on national TV. I guess, well, we're taping now, so last night.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we filmed, just to go behind the curtain a little bit. We filmed 3 weeks ago. Like usually there's a bit of a delay between filming and broadcast. Although 3 weeks I think is pretty much as short as it could be in terms of how long it takes to get the show on the air. So I'd been there, I'd obviously participated, but I hadn't actually seen the show at all before last night. So I was really excited to do that. I had a small watch party with some friends and family at a local bar. So being able to share that with everyone was really great. There's a sort of swearing to secrecy, and I think everybody who's involved in Jeopardy cares a lot about Jeopardy and cares about keeping the secrets and things like that. So it was being held pretty close to my chest to what the outcome was, and really exciting to be able to to win, obviously, and share that with everyone was a great time.
Well, that's pretty good 3 weeks because, you do a podcast every 2 weeks. Think about that. And it's actually fast. Most reality shows are 6 months in advance. Let's go back to this watch party. When you were there, did people at the watch party do like we did? My husband and I were shouting out the answers and playing along with you last night and, supporting.
We were doing it a little bit whenever there were a few questions that none of us got, and I would tell everyone, hey, none of us got this. Does anyone have it? And there were a few times where people were able to supply the answer, which was good. So, there was a lot of excitement after the end, obviously.
Well, Doug Ford, the Premier of Ontario, didn't allow the drinking hours to be earlier for your national television debut compared to Sunday's, Canadian-U.S. finals in the Olympics where there was packed bars. But, it's a bit better because you're a sportscaster and a sports broadcaster. Being on national TV, did that kind of take away the sting of 4 days later watching the Olympics lose, the Canadian team lose?
Well, that was a tough one. I mean, I was watching along with everybody else, Sunday morning, obviously cheering on the Canadian team. That was tough. I mean, look, if you need me to be a venue for Canadian pride now that the Olympics are over, feel free to root me on, fellow Canadians. I'm happy to have your devotion.
Well, you were.
I don't think it's as fervent as
I
don't think it's as fervent as hockey as hockey fandom. But sure, I can be the Canadian representative. I believe my opponents are all American, so
they are. I was going to say that. You got a lot of the Canadian answers. They had no clue, so I was very excited. We'll talk about that in a minute. Let's go back a bit in time to explain to us why did you want to be on Jeopardy and how did it happen?
Sure. Well, this was in my anecdote yesterday, so I think it's fair to repeat here, which is that I was the 4-time champion of Camp Walden Staff Jeopardy, which was a real feather in my cap as a staff member at camp. I was a canoe tripper at Walden for a while. 1 year I took off and I helped write the questions as well, so I was on both sides of that. My older brother was also a 3-time champion there, so there was some family tradition there, and I think that probably speaks to trivia and knowledge being something that was valued among our family as something to talk about. I think going even further back, honestly, when I was a kid, my mom loved Wheel of Fortune. She would always make sure to watch Wheel of Fortune around at 7 o'clock. Jeopardy, of course, is on right after. So I think it was just natural that it was on. It was the thing that was on at 7:30. So I did watch it a fair amount as a kid and through university and until today. Um, I tried out. I applied and tried out in 2011. I know because it was my last year of university and I was called for an audition. At that time, they did in-person auditions in different cities, so I had to go from Montreal. I was at McGill. I had to take I had to take the train down to New York for a weekend and audition in person. Didn't get called after that. Same process as is now, where it's sort of like they meet you and they can decide if they want to call you or not. I can't remember if I must have written a test again at some point afterwards, but around COVID time, I think they changed it to be the anytime test system that they have now, which is that you can write a test whenever. If you do well enough, you're put into a contestant pool that I think there's some randomness to it where they just may or may not call you. And I did a Zoom group interview probably 3 or 4 months ago now. And then again, it's just sort of like, if we like you, we'll call you. Even if we like you, we may not call you. And they say, feel free to apply multiple times after there's an expiry of your time in the pool, because there's been lots of people who have been on the show who, it took 3 or 4 times applying in order to get there. So for any aspiring contestants out there, if you watch Jeopardy and feel like you know the clues, if you feel like you do pretty well on that, take the test. It's good to get in the process, and you never know, you can make it to the big show. I never thought I would. I sort of had this feeling of wanting to do it, but the chances are pretty low. Hoping that I would do well if I got there, obviously, but being given the opportunity was just fantastic. It was a fantastic thing to happen.
They paid for your whole way down. Everyone went with you too, or just you? How did that work?
So, as Menschwarmers listeners will know, I have 3 young children. So it was a little difficult to get everyone down there. It was just me, and I was there. I was in Los Angeles for about I think for 3 nights. They do not pay for contestants to appear, but runners up win $2,000 or $3,000. So the cost of the trip would be essentially covered, for yourself at least. So unfortunately, wasn't able to have any family or friends in the audience. But I think that probably helped a little bit with the nerves, because I honestly I was incredibly nervous. I
You
think it's
look
visible if
nervous. I
you
have to say, you look nervous.
watching it last night. That was the thing that was most readily apparent to me, was like I could see myself swaying back and forth, which, to be honest, is not something I even noticed that I do. But I could tell how nervous I was answering some of the questions, and unsure of myself in answering some of the questions. And that's just the nature of the game. I don't think that ever goes away. I think even if you're up there for a long stretch, there's always going to be some hesitation or uncertainty until you hear that the answer is correct. You don't know for sure.
Well, you could say you were davening, right? It was not back and forth. It was. So when you got down there, did you bring something from good luck charm or something, or an object with you from home?
No, I didn't. I really ought to have. I will also say that this is also, a secret that it would not be readily apparent. I was wearing incredibly uncomfortable shoes, and I had been spent some time the day before. I don't know why. It was my first time in Los Angeles. The only thing I know about the city is you can't walk anywhere. Despite that, I decided to walk from, Culver City up to Santa Monica in poor shoes. My feet were killing me. I had blisters. The day of the taping, I had these same shoes on that were killing my feet. You're standing for long stretches, but I just went into a flow state at some point and forgot about it. But that night, all I remember is taking my shoes off and feeling a sense of sense of relief. Finally, I was just so uncomfortable. So I should have brought honestly, I should have brought something more comfortable. I should have had some good luck charms, or at least some lucky shoes. That would have helped me.
Well, do you get to choose in the studio where you are? Like, you're the middle at the first day, the first show. Is that like they tell you, or you can
Well,
choose?
the champions on the furthest left podium when you're watching on TV. I guess it's the right podium when you're on that perspective. The other two podia are just chosen by random. There's interestingly enough, there is a lot of regulation of the American game show space because of the quiz show scandals in the 1950s. the subject of the Robert Redford quiz show movie. So like before the episode, there is a lawyer who comes in and sort of gives a standards and practices spiel about all that stuff. There's a lot of separation between there's separation between the hosts and the contestants, certainly, just because there could he has some knowledge. There's separation between the judges and contestants. Like there's a lot of deliberate and very smartly done things just to make sure that everything is above board, and completely is. So who is selected, because they tape 5 episodes per day. So who the two new contestants are each time is randomly selected from the pool of us that are there, and what podium you take as well, also randomly selected. So there is a ton that goes into it to just make sure everything is completely above board and in compliance with the rules that exist, and making sure that things are as fair and random as possible.
I mean, but you're a lawyer. It's kind of like jury selection. It wasn't strange for you.
No, not at all. I mean, it's an interesting process. I'm glad I got to go. I was the second episode that taped on the day that we taped, because it was, is the Tuesday episode that played last night. So that was nice. I didn't have to be in the green room that long. It's a bit it's a bit like sweating it out all day, waiting for your time. And I think that probably helped with not being too anxious, because at least I was going sooner rather than later. There's a whole questionnaire they have you ask you to fill out about anecdotes. You give information about different things, and they sort of run through with you what they want to talk about or what they think might be interesting, and it's sort of up to them what anecdote they want to talk about. As others have said before me, everyone who goes on Jeopardy, their anecdote after going on Jeopardy is, I was on Jeopardy. Whatever we did before is probably less interesting than the fact that we got to go on Jeopardy.
Well, this is a bucket list, so I want to know like how much prep you did for the game show, and where did you practice?
Yeah, that's a good point. So I would say the number one form of practicing was watching the show. The show has a certain rhythm. The questions have a certain rhythm. There's usually information in the clue that can give you the answer, and just sort of getting comfortable with the questions, I think, is is an important thing. Beyond that, there's been a lot of different strategies that people have talked about. A lot of people are into flashcards. Some people, I know James Holzhauer is big on children's books, which I have done. I've read my children things. A kid's book about Greek mythology covers enough ground that you might be able to answer some Jeopardy questions.
Well, you had one. Can
And
we just, spoiler alert, you had Goodnight Moon. I knew that one too. So
yeah, so there was a category on children's literature, and I definitely knew the Goodnight Moon one. There was a question on Amelia Bedelia. I didn't ring it. I tried to ring in on, but didn't get in time.
Fancy
That I knew the answer
Nancy, of
to.
course. Yeah. Also.
Ironic, because I hate the Amelia Bedelia books and refuse to read them to my children. A lot of Wikipedia reading, to be honest, and there is. So this is like similar to the children's book. There's a way. Wikipedia is obviously translated to a lot of different languages. One of the languages that it is in is called Simple English, and it's basically like every article has a little synopsis. It's not, they don't have it for every article, but for a lot of them, you can put them in Simple English. And instead of giving you, an encyclopedia entry, I would say it gives you a 5th grade encyclopedia entry, and that
Spark
is
note. Exactly. Yeah.
exactly, and I found that very useful because it just gives you enough information. But yeah, watching the old episodes and following online with the questions was helpful, because one of the things I would do is, if I didn't know the answer to something, I would just go to the Wikipedia page for that thing, and it's like, well, here's something I don't know about. They're not going to ask this specific question again, but they might ask about some other Verdi opera or something like that. So I ought to know. I ought to know, have some sense of what those are.
What was the categories that you were most nervous about?
I thought that science would be my most difficult ones. There was a category about astronomy yesterday, and I think I did fairly poor on them. I might have tried to buzz in on a few. I can't exactly recall, but I don't know if I got any of the answers correct. I don't have a science background, and my education on that stopped in grade 10 or 11, really. So I think that was hard. There was, I would say, like, I know Broadway fairly well, but there was a category on Broadway theaters that I honestly, I got one on
Right over my
Ethel
head.
Barrymore, that I like, where I know that where I know Ethel Barrymore's name from, that she was the matriarch of that family. I can't tell you. Like, sometimes there's things just come to you. But I missed all the other ones. Like, I don't know that I had the answer for them necessarily handy. It's interesting to see watching the show that it's like, I can tell in retrospect, that it's like, probably half the questions I tried to buzz in on at the same time and somebody else was quicker, and half of them I didn't know the answer to. Somebody else got it, and it wasn't because I knew it just as well. The questions are tough, and it's easy to be stumped on them in the moment, even if, watching at home or in retrospect you see this and say, well, obviously the answer is this. When you're up there and you're under the lights, a little frazzled, it's much trickier to come up with the answer.
Well, okay, but you did have a couple of aces in the hole. First of all, your Jewish background helped you on a question, which I was so excited. I was shouting out, "Yay, 10 tribes! What was the lost 10 tribes?" And you said of
I said
Israel.
Israel, yeah. I said of Israel. Yeah, that was nice to say. I definitely think that, some Jewish education probably helped with that. But I think everyone comes to the show bringing their knowledge, bringing their specific knowledge. There was one person who was one of the contestant pool that we were in is a Methodist preacher, or I may be getting that wrong, but she is a preacher, and I would say her knowledge of the New Testament is probably much more significant than mine is. And my knowledge of the New Testament is unfortunately limited, and unfortunately, or not, maybe unfortunate or fortunate, that is a category that does come up every now and then on Jeopardy. There are questions about the Bible, and mine stops with Ezekiel. I don't even know what the last book of the Old Testament is. Whatever. Mine stops with the Song of Songs. So beyond that, I'm kind of useless.
Okay, but you're not useless in sports. You aced the question was which country where their soccer players go by a single name. So you said, obviously.
Brazil.
All right. And
That
then
was
I
right.
even knew this one. There was a category about gum. What field is named for a chewing gum? Do you remember?
Yeah, that was Wrigley
It was
Field.
Wrigley Field.
Uh,
Right.
th- that was exciting. So that was great because I got the first daily double. I think it was the fourth question or fifth question that I'd been answering. I'd gotten a few right, so it gave me the opportunity to go for a true daily double, which was one of my goals. I would say, going down to tape, that I want to say those words, and it was fun to be able to do it, even if the risk was only relatively small in the first round.
Okay, so lastly, before we talk about some of the ending things of the episode when you were like losing and we were all like, oh no, you did have a question that married your Canadianness and your sports knowledge, which was what city do the Habs play? Duh, and none of them knew that.
Yeah, again, saying no one else knew it is not necessarily fair, because I think everybody else was buzzing in on those ones. The world cities, something that everyone studies. Geography is pretty common Jeopardy question, so people know about that. But I did buzz in and say Montreal. As a proud McGill grad, I guess it would have been shameful to not know that one. And that led to the daily double that I was able to make a big wager on, and sort of come back and allow me to take the lead. Honestly, watching last night, I didn't remember how far behind I was
I know.
prior to
I was
getting a
like,
few questions in a row and getting the daily.
how did you deal with this? Like you were behind and then had this, what strategy did you use to come like the tortoise and the hare? There you were.
You know what? It's pretty typical these days for everyone to jump around the board trying to hunt the daily doubles. I think there's a realization that it's a real advantage to get them. You're more than likely to answer them, and if you bet big, it can be the chance to win, and that's what happened for me. The two people I played against, Trey and Krista, were excellent players. You do a little practice ahead of time, and so you get to see people how they do in practice. Doing some practice questions. That Trey was a two-time champion by the time we played. Krista was excellent in practice. I think collectively we got 3 or 4 questions wrong during the whole round. And ultimately it came down to luck. Like I'm completely aware of that. I got lucky getting a few and then getting the daily double that completely changed things. And if it wasn't for that, there's no way I would have won.
Okay, what was it like to interact with Ken Jennings? I mean, you said before the taping, it's like off limits, but he's an idol of many people. What was it like when you talked to him?
Very nice, genial guy. I think the vibe from him is that, like, he cares immensely about Jeopardy, about the show. It's a huge part of his legacy, and obviously now as the host, that's his job. But yeah, the interaction is basically limited to the few moments of the anecdote, and then after the show, there's a brief, roundup of how everyone did on the buzzer. And I believe that's published on Substack. So if you go on Jeopardy Substack, you should be able to see the post game interview, where I do a little kvelling, I would say, after after winning. So check that out as well. And but other than that, he just seems like a really sweet guy. He seems very intent on making Jeopardy as good a product as possible.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned earlier Camp Walden that you were four-time champions. On the show last night on Tuesday night, you mentioned that you actually won some cash each time. It's not chump change for a high school student. What did you do with your winnings at Camp Walden, and what are you going to do with the winnings from the real Jeopardy? If I can be so
So
gauche.
yes. So the $250 I won in staff tournaments, usually I would buy some beer for the staff party after the summer when we were back home. I definitely remember doing that a few times, or taking friends out for lunch or something like that. And with my winnings on Jeopardy now, unfortunately or fortunately, it came to a person who is a complete spendthrift and unable to spend any discretionary money that I have, even if I want to. There's nothing I desire. So honestly, I'm going to be paying down my mortgage and investing and things like that. So I wish I had something more interesting to say. Maybe it'll fund a trip for me and my kids somewhere. But honestly, it's going to be put to the most boring purposes I can think of.
Okay, finally, what happens next? It's all non-NDAs, you can't say. But if is it in your heart of hearts to get called back for the Tournament of Champions or maybe Jeopardy Masters? Is that a possibility?
There is an interesting amount. So they do a fair amount of what they now call postseason play in Jeopardy. I think when I was a kid watching, it was only the Tournament of Champions, and before the elimination of the 5-game cap, it was just people who had won 5 games. It was whenever they had enough 5-game champions, they would have a tournament. And now that's sort of changed because the cap is removed. You have guys who are winning 11, 20 games. Toronto's Mateo Roche won 20 plus games. And the Tournament of Champions, I think, is just on a yearly basis. So there is an expansion based on the last Tournament of Champions to include more people, and they do an additional championship wild card for people who didn't win enough to qualify for the Tournament of Champions. They have some spots available and have those people in a tournament. So I can't say anything about whether I would be qualified for either of those. But obviously it would, it was lovely doing Jeopardy, and I would welcome the opportunity to do more in the future.
Well, now you have like 500,000 almost, because there are other Canadians from Jewish faith who've appeared on Jeopardy before you. Do you know any of them? Jordan Nussbaum from Thornhill, Dr. Evelyn Rubin, also 2018, she won 50,000, and a teacher from Heschel School last year, Aidan Orzak, also became a Jeopardy champion, a grade 8 teacher. Those are the ones we wrote about at the CJ, and don't know if you know any of them.
I don't personally. I mean, I've seen the names. I've seen the names in the episodes, and I've done some looking for past Toronto competitors. Honestly, I know like very vaguely a few people who have done Jeopardy before, but I don't really know anyone personally that much. So aside from the people I played with, who we've been able to stay in communication the last few weeks, and given that we're the only people who have known the results up until now, it's been nice to have a group that can commiserate or talk together about what's going on. But other than that, it's been nice hearing from people. Plenty of people have reached out that I know professionally or casually or from my past, whatever, to congratulate me. So it's been lovely to hear from people with the congratulations.
You were in the Alex Trebek studio. Is that what that's called? That's what it's called, right? When you
The Alex
tape
Trebek stage, I believe.
stage. When you saw that, like, what was your impression of actually the studio itself from watching it on TV to actually being there?
It feels larger than life. It's a TV production, so the board is big, the screen is big. There's an audience that is watching you. There's a camera on a crane. This isn't something I'm really acquainted with. My limited role in sports media is mostly as a spectator. So it's an amazing production. They do an amazing job. Really just incredibly professional, everyone who's there. So it was a wonderful experience. I mean, there's nothing I can say that's more in praise than that. It was a wonderful experience. I was so lucky to have been called, and to be able to be part of it was just such a thrill. Really, a
Okay,
thrill of a lifetime. Again, something I always wanted to do.
okay, so you get the money. like a few months later. But did they give you like a mug at least or something to take home?
Oh, I have a hat. I have a hat. I have a hat. I wore it. I wore it
Let's
last
see.
night
Let's
to the
see.
watch party. It's in another room.
Oh,
I can go
sorry.
get it if you want, if you need to take a picture of it. But I have a hat. I think I will never wear it again, unfortunately, because wearing it again, the only reason to wear it again is that so somebody asked me, "Were you on Jeopardy?" And that just seems like a little too braggadocious, I guess, for me to be doing on a daily basis. So at least for the few years, I'm not planning on wearing the hat again outside the house. But I got a hat and a tote bag and a free year subscription to the Jeopardy Substack. So those are the parting gifts these days. Not bad.
And the check is in the mail.
The check will be in the mail in a few months.
Yeah, that's what I read, that it takes like 4 months till you get there. And does California take some of the tax off, which I guess you can get back? I read that too.
That's my understanding as well, but I haven't had to deal with that yet. And anyways, it's a champagne problem, almost
Exactly.
literally.
Thank you so much for sharing this wonderful experience. We wish you the best for the next couple of nights. And yeah, I guess we'll have to stay tuned till to see what happened to you when we watch tonight and tomorrow. Thanks a lot for sharing this. It's been great.
Thanks, Alan.